Alrighty, let's open up VS Code and let me go live. Okay, let's open Visual Studio Code and open the assignment that we've been working on. And let me close all of these. Okay, so we did a lot already. We created the header and the footer. We made it so that everything is responsive. So if we go small screen, last week we created this little menu that can come in and out. And we also animated this X going from the hamburger icon to an X, and should still navigate. The only thing I didn't do last week, we just didn't have time, I guess, was right now it's only the home page that has this responsive navigation. When we go to another page, it's I didn't copy paste my header, so it's not working properly here. But for that, all you have to do is in index.html, just take the whole header and copy it. Where's the header? Header goes from there. Oh no, where is it? There it is. So it helps to put some spaces and leave some comments. Anyways, so this is the header in index, and on pages like shop, we could see it's a lot simpler. This was back when we didn't add all that responsive stuff. So we got to replace this with this one on all the pages. So you just gotta copy this header and paste it. So delete the old one, paste in the new one. Do that for every page that has a header. Oh, I don't know why grid is still here. We're not using that anymore. So we did 2 pages. I think this is the last one. Save or file, save all. And now shop has the responsive header. Oh, we gotta fix that though. Okay, over here my header, the drop down is behind the picture. We just have to make sure the z-index of this is higher than this, so it comes in front of it. So this is the shop page, right? Okay, let's go to our CSS, because that's where we changed the z-index. So in shop.css, I'm gonna do a control F and just look for z-index, and we can see here I'm using z-index. I think 5 is the highest one. I put z-index 5 when I animate the slides. So at one point, the current image is gonna have a z-index of 5, which is, I guess, higher than this one, because I don't think I even put a z-index on that nav. So let's check the nav z-index. So that would be in styles.css. So here there's no results for search for z, so I know I didn't put any z-index. So all we have to do is say we could, I think, put it on the header, or yeah, we should probably put it on the header. Well, you got to make sure your header is on top of everything. So in order to use z-index though, you got to have position, something other than static. So we could use relative if we don't want anything to change, and then z-index, since 5 was the highest, 6 should be enough to put this on top of everything. Okay, so now it looks like it's on top. Okay, and now let's check the other pages. So this is the home page, that works. Here's the shop page. Now this one works. About page, looking good. And the contact page. Okay. And that's pretty much it. And then, I don't know, there's a few things we didn't cover in HTML, some simple things that might be outdated. That's why I didn't cover it, I guess. Like tables. Um, so tables were used back when there were no better methods for arranging things. Like, for example, this right here, we've got like rows and columns. You might have used tables before to do this. But tables not a good idea because it's not easy to set the number of columns and rows, or I don't think it's even possible to do that with tables through CSS. So if we had this full size and then we wanted to make it, instead of 3 columns, we want to make it like a single column or 2 columns. If we were using HTML tables, we wouldn't be able to do that because with tables, you set the number of rows and columns in the HTML, not the CSS. So, but I'll create a small table somewhere. Where could we put a table? Maybe, okay, whenever I click on one of the cars, I could have a car page. But since this is a static website where we don't have a backend, we don't have a database to save like the car information. See, normally what you would do with a non-static website is you could save all the information for every car, so including the name, the price, the image, or not the image itself, but a link to the image, and all the other information. You could save that in a database, and then when you click on any car, you would be able to say, okay, you would send a message to the backend, which is basically what handles, the stuff that you don't see on the front. So you'd click here, and then it would send a message to the backend, or it'd send a request to get all that information for that car, and then it would put together maybe another page using that car's information, and it would maybe, I don't know, depends on how you want to style it, but you could have the picture and a table with all the information for the car. But you wouldn't create a separate page for each car. You would just create one template page, and the car data would fill in that template. But since we can't do that, we don't have a backend, I'll just do one single page just for one of them. So just so we could see what it looks like. So I'm gonna create a separate page. So a brand new HTML file. I'll call this maybe carinfo.html. Carinfo.html. And here we want it to be just like every other page. So I'll copy the header and the footer. Actually, not just the header and the footer, but this entire thing. Actually, why don't I just copy paste the whole thing, and then I'll delete what I don't need. So Control A to select everything, and then where is it? carinfo.html. Paste this in here and save it. And let's get rid of everything inside main. Well, that's all it is actually. It was just this. So we don't need the welcome. We don't need this stuff. So I'm just gonna leave main empty, and I'll change the class to car info. So I just copied the index file and I just deleted what was inside main, and I changed the class to car info. Okay. And then just let's maybe create an h1 that says the name of whatever car we clicked on. Well, since we can't do that again, we don't have a way to dynamically add the name of the car. Since we're not going that deep into it, we're just doing a simple static page. I'll just type in the name of one of the cars, and we had a Ford Mustang in there. So let's say this would be the page for the Ford Mustang. Now, just to check if it's working, go back here and we'll type, instead of shop.html, car info.html. Okay, there, Ford Mustang. So that works. We just need to make clicking one of the pictures a link to that page, so we don't have to type it manually like that. Okay. But does anybody have questions at the moment, or do you want me to um, pause and show you the code for a little bit so you could copy it? I haven't really done anything. I just, like I said, copy pasted the index.html into carinfo.html, and I just changed what's inside main to just say Ford Mustang. And again, this is all uploaded on the OneDrive, so it should be here if you guys need to follow along. But just in case, let me give you the link to it. So it's this file right here, or folder. So I'll share that with you and copy the link, paste it. Okay, so if you need to follow along, you can use that. Um, yeah, so I'll give you guys a minute to download that while I just talk more about this. So so I'm sure some of you at least might be interested in doing more than just HTML and CSS. Eventually, you might want to learn JavaScript, which lets you do a lot more with your web page. With JavaScript, you can create functions. You could make things happen when you click a button. And you can also learn about something called Node.js, which is just JavaScript that you can use on a server, so that you can do things like what I'm saying, add this information dynamically. So instead of me typing this like this Ford Mustang manually, I would have some kind of variable that I could use. In JavaScript, you could basically create these variables. Well, not just plain JavaScript. If you're using something like Node.js and React, for example, in React is just like a JavaScript library, I guess you could call it, or not a library, maybe a framework, but it's like an add-on, something that someone created with JavaScript that lets you more easily play with the front end of a web page. And you would do things like, for example, instead of typing in Ford Mustang, you would be able to say something like car.name, and then whatever car you clicked on, it would just show that car's name here. And then you could have an image, and instead of typing in manually like images slash cars slash car1, instead of doing that, you would just be able to put in something like car.image.url, and then you'd be able to put in whatever car you clicked on, that car's picture. Okay. But again, this is a static page, so since we're not using all that extra stuff, we're just going to type in the name, Ford Mustang, and we probably want to show our picture of the car here, so I'll say again, images slash cars slash, I think the Mustang was car2. Yeah. We got our name, we got the picture. Now we want to put some information. And maybe since we're in full screen mode, I'll just put some padding around the heading so it's not so close to the top and to the picture, and maybe some padding on the left so it's not close to the edge. And then we could add some info here inside a table. So I'm planning on creating a table right here or something. So to create a table, I will use the table tag. Okay, so making a table is kind of like making a list. You know how when you create a list, you have the UL or the OL, and then inside it you put LIs for each list item. Well, table is a little more complicated. Not really. It's you have a table class, a table element, and inside the table element you have table rows. So for every row you create a TR. So if this is a table right now, it's only one row, so not really a table at this point. But if I start adding more rows, now it's 2 rows, but it has no columns, or it has maybe a single column. But you don't put your data right between the TR. You have to put it inside a table data tag. So you have your table row. Inside that you have table data. So if I have something like this right now, this is a table that has 2 rows. So 1, 2 rows, and 1 column. Now it's a single column because let's draw this in Illustrator. Because each table row just has a single TD inside. If I added another TD, now this row has 1, 2 columns, but this one still just has 1 column, so you'll end up with like an empty box if you created a table like this. But it looks like this. Oh no, I have to sign in again. I hate getting signed out. Or I'll skip that. I'll just explain it like this. We'll just make the table so you could see it. So I have nothing in this table right now. So let's just put something like inside table. Okay, so this one would be row 1, column 1. And then this one would be, again, row 1, but column 2. So I'll write row 1, column 1. And here I'll write row 1, column 2. And then this is row 2, column 1. And let's see what that looks like. Oh, it's down here. Okay, because we didn't make it inline block, so this went down here. It doesn't look like a table, it just looks like text, but if we give the table rows or the table data some borders, then maybe it'll start looking like a table. But you can see there's row 1, row 2, row 1, column 1. So this is column 1. This is column 2. Since we didn't put a row 2, column 2, it's empty here. But we can add one right now. We could just paste this here, say row 2, column 2. Now we have row 2, column 2. But let me put that on this side and give it some borders so it looks like an actual table. So let's do that with a CSS file. I'll go into CSS and I'll create a new CSS file called carinfo.css. Carinfo.css, we need to hook it up with carinfo.html. So I will copy this CSS link and change it from styles to carinfo.css. So now I should be tying carinfo.html to carinfo.css, and just to check if it's working, we have our where is it? In main, I gave main a class of carinfo, and I put a table inside. I also have the h1 and the image. We have this table and h1. Let's make it let's make the table display inline block, so it'll go next to the image instead of on the next line. So carinfo, or main carinfo, because we put carinfo on the main element. I want to say well, really nothing for carinfo, but carinfo h1. Let's give that some padding. Let's say 20 pixels. And then I don't have to type main, I could just type carinfo. Carinfo table display inline block. Now I realize we've been using display inline block and position, relative, and absolute and stuff a lot. We haven't spent too much time on grid. I mean, I showed you grid in the beginning, but that's really the easier, more modern way to do all this stuff that we're doing. So we'll do a few more examples with grid after. For now, let's just use inline block. And let's see what that looks like. Well, I don't think it's working yet. Carinfo.html, carinfo.css. Let's check if it's actually working. I'm gonna say main carinfo h1. I don't think did I save everything? I think I did. I don't see any padding. Padding's not showing up. To double check, yeah, you can see padding 0 here for the h1. There's no, okay, so my CSS is not working. Let's find out why. Is it because I didn't spell it with the capital I? Oh, I put a capital I here, but I put a lowercase I here and here. Okay, Alright, now we got the extra padding, and now this is next to it. Alright, so uppercase, lowercase matters. So always check that too. I had a small I instead of a big I, so it wasn't working. But now it's working, so now this is here, but let's give that some borders. So car, info, table, and let's look at the table data. Give that a border. 2 pixels, solid. Car info table. There. Okay, so now it has a border. Let's also give them some padding. So let's say 10 pixel padding. Okay, so now you can see my table with 2 columns, 2 rows. So if you want to add more columns and rows, you'd have to do it through here, through the HTML. And this is why it's not good for mobile friendly design. So this would be row 3, this would be row 4, but still column 1 and 2 because I only have 2 columns. Row 1, 2, 3, 4, column 1, column 2. If you wanted a third column, then for each of these you'd have to add another table data. Three. Okay, and now I can have 3 columns. Alright, so yeah, but because you have to change the number of columns through your HTML, there's no way to go into the CSS and create a media query and then say, okay, if the screen is this size, change the number of rows and columns. You can't really do that with this. And that's why I say it's kind of like an outdated way of doing this. I don't know, but there's still some situations where you might want to use a table. Like if you have just a bunch of data you're trying to input and then you don't want to, you're not really worried about the mobile friendly stuff. You just want a page that just has a bunch of data. Also, another thing about the tables is might be easier to export to like an Excel sheet or something, or to import the data if it's just a table. So there are reasons why you might want to use a table, but anyway, so tables, they have a few special tags that you can use. Like for example, you can add a table head. T head. If you wanted to like organize it like this, and yeah, maybe your first row is in there. So you could put a T head around your first row, and then a T body around the rest of them. This doesn't really do anything except organize it for you. It's like putting a div instead of T body and T head. Think of these as divs that you're surrounding the table row with and the rest of it with, just to organize it. It's not gonna change anything here. What will change is if you, instead of table row, if you put th instead of tr. Or sorry, don't change the tr. The tds would have to change to th. I think, yeah. Yeah, then that would make it, see, it makes it bold. But it lost its border because I only put the padding and the border on the TD. But I'll just put a comma here and say car info table th as well. So you could say do that for the car info table data, but also do it for the th, the table head. So now it should still have its border, but the only difference is it's bold. So let me zoom in so you could actually tell. So if you put a th instead of a td, it'll treat it as like a table head. So sometimes tables have headers. It would make more sense if I put actual information here, like let's say I don't know. Well, what is this table gonna have? I don't know, maybe some stuff about the engine, some stuff about exterior, and then some stuff about features or something. And then you could, put some information about the engine here, like, I don't know, like, what is it? 350 horsepower. Okay, so I gotta like put if I'm putting something about the engine, I'll put it in the first row. I mean the first column of each other row. So 350 horsepower, 400 pound torque. I don't know. What else? 0 to 60. And that's not right. It's probably more like 4. I don't know. I'm guessing here. Anyway, so stuff about the engine would be there. And then for the exterior, I don't know what you would put, like, I don't know, you'd put the dimensions, probably, if you were gonna do it. Dimensions, weight, something, well, actually, this wouldn't go here. It would go here. And here. Blah, blah, blah. And then for features, this, I left it empty. Anyway, so engine, exterior features, and then you would list the stuff in there. So yeah, if you're gonna have a table, you can use the table tag. You have T head if you want to organize it. You want to split it between a head and a body, you can do that. Then you could use CSS to, I don't know, just change whatever's in the T head and the T body. But if you're not going to really use it, then it's kind of pointless to have a T head and a T body. If you make something, instead of TD, you make it a TH, basically just going to make it bold and give it another element name so you could target it differently. And yeah, for every row, you have a table row. And if you're going to add another column, you got to make sure to add another TD or TH for every row. So the TR is the row, and think of the TH and the TD TH or TD. Remember, the only difference is this one's gonna be bold. This one's not. TH, TD is the same thing, almost. Okay, so those are the columns, the THs and the TDs. And also, if you don't want the table to look like this with the gap between the borders, you just have to add to the table, just say border collapse, and then there won't be any space. It'll just be a table with just borders, single border line. Anyway, so that's how you could add that information. And then to make it look a little bit nicer, I didn't get any real car information, but maybe we could just check Ford, Mustang. Just, I don't know, it's bothering me that I didn't put any real information there, so let's just look at some random stuff here. What could we try to think of how to make use of a table? I have no idea. And where would I put the price? If I put the price, then it wouldn't make sense to have like price and then what, just a single place. What am I gonna do with the other two rows? So yeah, that's why. Didn't really think about this before, so I don't know. It's not really. You could think of a way to make use of a table, but right here I don't really know how to use the table for car information. Doesn't really make sense. All right, so I'll just do the styling then. Forget the real information. So the one thing I want to do is make this picture not so close to the side. So we could say main car info image. I'm using the arrow here because the image is directly a child of main, and in case I have other images somewhere else that's not directly inside main, I don't want them to be affected by this. If I just put a space, then it's any image inside main car info. But if I put the arrow, that's saying any image that's a direct child of main. So it can't be like image inside a div inside main. It has to just be an image inside main, directly inside it. Okay, so for that image, let's give it some padding, 20 pixels also. And the table as well, I guess we should do padding 20 pixels. And maybe center them. So if you wanted to center these two in the middle of the page, you're gonna have to wrap them with a div. So the table and the image, you want to wrap those with something. So say div, put them inside that div, and give that div a class equals wrapper or something. Okay, but now since I put it inside a div, this image is no longer a direct child of main. So I'm gonna have to say car info div image, or more specifically, the wrapper. And then since I put them inside a div called wrapper, main car info wrapper. I can take that wrapper, give it margin auto to center it. Oh, I guess it needs a width to be able to center it. Width, let's say 600 pixels. Maybe 800. Still not enough. 900. 1,000. 1,300. Okay, that's enough. Alright, what about 1,200? That's okay. Alright, so I just had to put them inside a div that's big enough to fit both. To somehow center it. And then if you want to center this, you could just do text align center on that one. And what else? I think I'll increase the padding a little bit, just so like the footer is touching the bottom. So instead of 20 pixel on everything, I'll put 30. Maybe make that 130 as well. And maybe even give padding on the wrapper. Okay, so it's a little bit taller now. Anyway, so this wasn't really a page that I wanted to include. I just wanted to show you how to use tables. And we didn't create a link to it yet, so let's say one of these pages, let's make this link to that. So when I click on this image, it takes me to that page that I just created. So that's gonna be in the shop page. That's one of the cars. Which one is it? It's car 2, right? This is the first car. This is the second car, the Ford Mustang. So I could make this whole div a button. So I could click this, or I could click anywhere on the picture. And to do that, we just say, we take this whole div. Oh, but this might ruin things, because I'm using div nth child car. Okay, so then I'll just put an a tag inside car, and I'll wrap it around car info. And then this a will have href equal to car info.html. Okay, so now if I click the car info, it takes me here. Okay. So yeah, you could make anything a link, just wrap the anchor tag around it, the a tag. I don't know why it's organizing it so weird though. I don't want it to look like that. Just bring the closing tag here, put that there. Okay. There's the opening tag, there's the closing tag, and car info is inside the a. So this whole div car info, which is the one that slides up, that whole thing is a link now. I could make this whole div a link, but then I would have to redo my CSS for the nth child. It would mess it up because right now I'm using shop.css, Remember, we're using this div car nth child 2. So I'm saying div with the class of car. That's the second child. Put this picture. Div that's child 3. Use this picture. But if I put an A around it, then it will no longer will be a div with the class of car. It'll be an A with the class of car. No big deal. I'm sure there's a way to get around that, but anyway, so any questions on tables? You don't have to add a table. I'm not going to make you do that part. I just wanted to show you how you make a table. Okay. So places you might see tables, maybe maybe emails. Like sometimes you get spam email or advertising email. Well, I don't know if it's true still, but I remember a while ago you couldn't use some of the advanced CSS stuff in email, so people used tables to, design their email advertising. They would put, I don't know, pictures and stuff. They would split everything into a table. That was their way of designing their email. Okay, so we did all this without CSS grids, but I'll show you how to do this again, but this time with CSS Grid. We get pretty much the same result. But if we use CSS Grid, I don't know, it's a little bit easier to understand, I think. And it's a little more convenient as well. You don't have to figure out the percentages. Like for these, the way I got 3 images to fit here, I had to say the width of this is 33%. So each one's 33%. And then when I did this, I had to make it like 50% or slightly less because it wasn't fitting. And then like this, it's 100%. But with the CSS grids, you don't have to figure out those percentages. You just say you want this to be 2 columns or 3 columns. And then you can do more than just decide the number of columns and rows with CSS grid. You could also create grid areas. Like you could say this is like the header area. This is the cars area. And then each of those areas you could split into its own number of rows and columns. So yeah, we'll look at how to use CSS Grid, but I feel like, I don't know, we just talked about tables, and maybe let's take like I don't know, I don't usually take a break this early, but I think we should take a quick, like a 10-minute break, not as long as, not a full 15 minutes, but just a 10-minute break. And then we'll come back, and I just want everyone to be like fresh and ready to do this, but this time using CSS grids. Or maybe we'll create a brand new page instead of messing with this one. I'll start a brand new site from scratch, and we'll use CSS grids for that one. Okay, so let's take a quick break. Okay. And then if you have any questions, let me know. Alright, so yeah, I posted a link to W3 Schools if you want to learn more about tables. But I pretty much covered what you need to know. You could look at it to get some more practice if you want. So CSS grids pretty much replaces tables in most cases. And we could have done this entire website using CSS grids, but just that one problem with CSS grids is it's not supported by older browsers. So that's one reason why you might not want to use it. But then when you learn more, you start getting into JavaScript, and I'm pretty sure like most frameworks that you use, like for example React or Angular, these are things that you might want to learn in the future. Whenever you use something like CSS grids that's not supported by older browsers, there's usually some kind of, you at the end when you're done with the website, you pretty much you could run some code to make it compatible with older browsers. It'll just automatically like change the code for you. But anyway, let's build something similar to this. But I don't want to keep doing the same site, so maybe I'll start a brand new one. And I'll delete this grid page because we never used it really. And let's make a brand new folder. So same place where I put CSS lesson, I'm gonna put new folder and call it grid lesson. And I'll open that to work in. So it should be empty right now. But again, all I did is create a new folder in here called grid lesson. It's empty right now. And I opened that with VS Code. All right, so let's start a new HTML file called index.html. And to get that HTML boilerplate, or the default layout, you're gonna type exclamation point and then press tab, and it'll give you all this. And you can save it. And we're gonna need a CSS folder, so I'll create a new folder called CSS. Inside the CSS folder, I'm gonna create new file, and we'll call it styles.css. Styles.css, okay, with the S. So since we created that, now we can link to it with the link tag in the head. Say type equals text/css, rel equals style sheet, and href equals css/styles.css. Right, so take a second to do that. Does anybody have questions, by the way? Oh, okay. Anyways, I haven't thought about I really thought about what kind of page to make now, so let's think about something. Should we make a restaurant page? Let's go to Yelp, get some ideas. Why is it on auto leasing in La Crescenta? Let's check restaurants. And let's just pick a website, a restaurant that has a website. I don't know which one of these would have one. The Black Cow. Let's click this. See if they have a website. And see if there's anywhere we could use CSS grids. Maybe not here. Maybe this could be a grid. These could be grids. Check the menu. That's probably a good place to use grids. Let's check some other sites. How about photography website? Yeah, this is probably a website builder flow themes. I don't know, I never heard of it, but looks like they use themes. But even if they're using themes, maybe we could is the actual website, or we're still on flowthemes.com. Let's check some other website. Okay, so for example, this one, let's see what it looks like. Alright, so I'm trying to think of how we could implement the grid here. You could have a grid, for example, with 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, and inside each column, well, it would just be a picture, an H1 probably, like an H3 or something, and a button. Nothing crazy. Check some art. This one's a little more complicated, I think. Yeah, because yeah, so this one, it's like a, what do you call it, like a collage, because it's not exactly rows and columns. I mean, well, yeah, there's 4 columns. We can clearly see there's just 4 columns, but they're not all the same height. This one's a little different. I don't know if we could do this with CSS Grid. I'm not sure how you would do this. I'm pretty sure I've done it before. I just don't remember how. So let me just take a look at the code. Well, this one, it's not that easy to tell how they're doing it. Okay, so they've got a div, well, class equals grid. And then inside, they've got, for each image, okay, so class equals grid, but they're using JavaScript here. And each picture is inside another div. Grid sizer. I don't know, I really want to show you how to do this, but at the moment I can't think about how we would do it. Let's just create something and then, I don't know, maybe we'll figure it out as we go. Okay. So let's create our grid container. Let's create a div, give it a class equals grid container. That will be the container for our grid. And inside it, let's create a few other divs. First, I'll show you how to use grid template columns to split it into how many columns and rows that you want. And then if we have time, I'll show you how to use grid areas. And it's almost our normal break time at 8, but since we just took like a 10-minute break, I think we'll take our normal break a little bit later, like around 8:15. Okay. So let's say each of these, it doesn't have to be a div, it could be an image as well, but it's better if we put divs, and then we could put whatever we want inside that div. For now, I'll just make a bunch of empty divs, so leave them empty for now. We'll add stuff later. So I'll just make, let's say, we want at least, let's say 1, 2, 3. Let's do 4 columns in 3 rows. So that means we got 4 times 3. So 12 divs total. So just make 4 and then copy it 3 times. Or just make 12 divs. So each of these divs will be something inside the grid container. So we could make each div take a certain row and column number. Okay, after you do that, go to styles. And what do we call this? Well, we don't have a body class. We'll just say grid container. Grid container. We'll also have the divs inside the grid container, but let me before I make it a grid, I just want to show you what it looks like when it's not a grid. You already know, but grid container div, let's give them all a background color of just black, let's say. Okay, and let's give them all a width of 100 pixels. Actually, do we need a width? We don't need a width. I mean, we might need a width because I think the height is more important. Let's do height like 100 pixels. And let me see what this looks like at the moment. Just a one big black box. I'm gonna temporarily put margin on it. Margin 10 pixels. So just so we could see all 12 of these. So you can see it's not just one big black box. It was a bunch of them stacked up on top of each other, since there was no space between them, it looked like one big black box, but this is the 12 divs that I just created. So all 12 of them are stacked up on top of each other in a single column, okay? Let me take off that margin. So it just looks like one tall thing, but it's just a bunch of them touching. So once we make it display grid and we give it grid template columns. So you use grid template columns to decide how many columns you want to split it into. And you can use like one FR for each column that you want. So if it's just one column, I'll just put one FR and it'll look the same. But if I put two 1FRs, then there's going to be two columns. So you can't tell right now, again, because of the space they're touching, so you can't, it looks like one big one. Let me add that margin back, maybe we could see it then. Yeah, so now you can see it's split into two columns. And if I add a third one, 1FR, now it's 3. And one more, now it's 4. Okay. And I think we can make them a little bit taller. I'll change the height to 200 pixels. Okay, so nice thing about grids is if I want to change the number of columns for different screen sizes, because on a mobile these might be too small, then we can use the media query or add media only screen and max dash width, let's say at 900 pixels. Then we can take the grid container. We don't need to say display grid because it's already display grid. We're just going to change the number of columns to, let's say, 3. Okay, so now at full size is 4 columns, but when I get smaller than 900 pixels, it becomes 3 columns. So you can't do that with tables. This is why grids is better. And then we can make another media query, copy paste that one, and say when it gets below, I don't know, 750, we'll make it just 2 FRs, so just 2 columns. Okay, so now it's 4 and then 3 and then 2. So maybe this is for like tablets and then this is for smaller tablets. And then eventually, when it's really small, let's say 670 pixels, then it'll just be 1 FR. So that's how easy it is to make it, you know, to design it for different screen sizes. You go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And I don't have to figure out percentages and stuff. Okay, so try that. And just create a new HTML file with 12 divs in it. 12 empty divs for now. Give the parent div a class of grid container. Link to your CSS, which should be inside a folder called CSS. And in that CSS file, give the grid container a display grid template columns with 4 1FRs. And give it a background color, the divs inside the grid container, give them all black or whatever color you want background just so you can see it. and a height. The width will be determined by the number of columns you have. So there's no need to put a width, just the height. And margin 10 pixels just so they're not touching. Because if I delete that margin, then you can't tell how many columns we have. So that's why I put the margin. But there's an alternative to using margin. Instead of a margin, you could say grid row, or what was it, row gap, let's say 10 pixels, and column gap 10 pixels. So you could add a gap to the grid with row gap and column gap, and then you can make that gap as big or small as you want. Kind of like adding margin, but and then I use the media query just to change the number of columns. So another thing we can do, we could add some pictures or information inside each of these boxes. You could put a picture in the back. For the pictures, again, I still haven't decided what to make this site for. I think the simplest one thing to do is just make it about paintings or something, so I don't have to put thought into like food and prices and all that. So I'll just grab some paintings, pictures of paintings, and save them inside. Oops, not there. Save them inside an images folder. Maybe inside images we'll have paintings. So images, paintings will hold all my pictures. So to get some paintings, I don't know if pixels is a good idea for that. Painting. I want a more specific painting. Let's go to, what do you call it? Not Mocha. What's that nice museum with the classic paintings? The Getty. So maybe it's a website on my favorite paintings at the Getty or something. Let's find paintings now. How do we find them? Okay, yeah, browse art collection. Let's look at paintings. All right, and I'll just grab 12 paintings. Actually, I'm gonna leave the page open. I'm gonna also take the information from the painting and copy paste it. Recent acquisitions. Focus. Where's the list of just all their paintings? Art collection. Same page. Collection, education. Let's just go to collection highlights and just pick some paintings here. Okay, so let's take this for example. Click on it. Get a nice bigger picture with the name and all the information. I'm gonna copy the image. Oh, actually not copy. I can't copy it into there. I have to download it. So save image as. We'll put it on desktop, CGD 200, grid lesson, images, paintings. So the name of the picture, I'm gonna put the actual name. Actually, no, just to make it easier for myself, because later I'm gonna use again nth child this for this background image. So maybe I'll just name them numbers. So 1.jpg. Let's do 0, 1 because we're gonna go up to 12. So 0, 1. That should be now inside my images folder. There it is. Okay, well, that's the first one. Now let's collect some more. And I'm going to keep the information too for this one. So I'm going to copy paste the Fountain of Love about 1785. I'll get this information and I'll paste it inside the first div. Inside a, for now, I'll put it inside a paragraph. And later I might change it to, put some of it inside an H1, split it up a little. But for now, I'll just put a paragraph with that information. And I'll do that for the next few images. So let's look at this one. Save image as. This one will be 02. Copy this. Paste it inside a paragraph. And this is going to be a long, tedious process. So you guys can start thinking about what you want to do. Just to use this grid example. And I don't know, I could make it your final assignment. So nothing specific, just any website that you can think of to make use of grids. So I've downloaded this and I'll copy this. For try to go a little faster. Oops. Did we already do this one? Yeah, we did. Okay, well, I'm out of featured. Just need like 2 more pictures, or 1 more, I think. Recent acquisitions. Check these. That's number 11. It's boring. Let's pick a nice one. Alright, so I got all my pictures, I think. And I got a little information about the pictures. Alright, so let's see what this looks like now. Well, we can't see it, but there's text in there. It's just black against a black background, so you can't see it unless you highlight it. So I'll start by going to grid container, and I'll say color. So anything inside, any text inside there, the color is gonna be blanched almond or white. Okay, that's kind of harsh on the eyes. I'm gonna change this black color to something gray, and I don't like that blanched almond color. It's kind of, I don't know why it's so hard on the eyes. About, I could just go with white, or let's try honeydew. I guess that's better. Okay. And grid container div. Let's say grid container div paragraph. Give those some padding. Alright, so now I've got a bunch of boxes with information about some painting. We could do the same as we did with the cars. Remember how with the cars I was able to hover over it and then it would bring up the information? I think I'll do the same with this one. So that means all these paragraphs, I'll put them inside another div with a class equal to info. So I'm going to put this class equals info inside every div before the paragraph. And then I'm going to put the paragraph inside. A lot of like repetitive steps, but this would all be avoided if we were creating a dynamic site that could just grab this information and we'll just have a single div that we could just use as a template. But for now, we just have to do it manually. just dragging the paragraph into the div. Saving it. Okay. The reason why I put it inside a div with the class of info is just so I could take that whole div info and push it outside of the um, outside of the actual div inside the container, which I didn't give a class, but I don't think I need to. The grid container div, so that's the actual column and row. I don't know why it lost the bottom gap though. What happened to that? Row gap 10 pixels. What happened to my row gaps? Oh, it's maybe because I added padding. Let's do all padding 0, margin 0, and more importantly, box sizing border box, so the padding doesn't get included in the overall size. Okay, that brings back my row gap. Here, I'll save you guys some time if you want to follow along, because this was a lot of repetitive steps that I had to take and might take you a while. So let me copy paste. Actually, I'll just upload this to OneDrive. But let me see if there's any more that I need to add. I'll do one more thing. I'll give do I need it though? I want to give each of these divs a class, but I don't think I really need it. It's just the div that's inside the grid container. So instead of using class name, I could just say grid container div to target these divs. So they don't really need a class name. But I'll add it just why not? I'll just add it anyway. So class equals, for these I'll say grid item. So I'll put grid equals class item for all these divs that are containing the painting information. I'd rather do it now than regret it later and say I should have done it earlier and have to upload it again. What's going on? I'm seeing red. Red is not good. Anytime you see red, it's because missing a closing quote on these. All right. Okay, I'll upload this now. Okay. I'm gonna put this in the OneDrive. New folder. Grid lesson. It's gonna take a little bit to upload. Actually, it's done already. And I'll share this. You could download that if you want to follow along. Okay, so adding the pictures should be easy. Adding the hover effect, we've already done that. So that should be no problem as well. Only difference is this time we're using CSS grids instead of position, absolute, and relative and stuff. So it should be easier, I think. Because all we do to change the number of columns and rows is change the number of these 1FRs. Also, you could change something to 2FR and the rest 1FR if you wanted one row to be like wider than the other. So like this one right now is 2FR, these are 1FR, so this is twice as big as these. So you could do things like that, or you could say, let me do that with this one. I'll say 2FR, 1FR, 2FR, 1FR. If I do it like that, then when we make it bigger, you'll see bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. So you could decide how big you want each column to be as well. But they're all equally nice paintings, so they'll all be the same size. Okay, so if you've downloaded that and you want to follow along, I'm gonna move on to the next step. So far, this is the same as what I uploaded. So now I'm gonna say for each div, I'm gonna put a different background image. So is again another repetitive step. I'm gonna have to use div nth child again, because every div has a class info. Actually, no, sorry, not the info. Every div has a class grid item. So grid items are all children of grid container. So this is grid item nth child 1, this is grid item nth child 2, 3, and so on. So where's grid container? So I'm no longer, I mean, it's still div, grid container div, but let's make this grid container grid item just to be more specific. So after grid container, my CSS rule here, it was grid container div. Just change it to grid item just to make use of this class that we gave it. So we're being more specific here. That shouldn't change anything. It should still look exactly the same. Now we're going to say grid container, grid item, colon, nth dash child will start with 1. And it will have a background image URL. And we're going to have to get out of our CSS folder, so // and then go into the images folder, paintings. We'll choose 0, 1. So this is why I gave them these numbers, just so that it'll be easier to copy paste this and just change that number. So nth child 1, paste, 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 paste. Okay, so I should have 12 of them, but now to change the number, because this one is nth child 1, the next one has to be nth child 2 and painting number 2. So easy way to do this is just highlight the 1, press Control D, and change that to 2. So it does both this one and this one at the same time with Control D. So I'll change this to, I'll press Control D, say 3. Let's highlight the next one, Control D, make that number 4. Control D, make that 5. Control D, make that 6. Control D, 7, 8, 9, And okay, so this one is 10, so Control D is not going to work for this one because there's a 0 here. So I'll change that to 10. And just do 2 more here for 11 and 12. Alright, if I do that, then I should have a different painting for each background. Yep. And then we can also, for the original grid item, this is for all of them, not a specific child. These are for a specific child, right? This is for all of those children. We're gonna say for all of them, background size cover and background position center, just so they fit a little better inside those boxes. Alright, so yeah, we got a grid of paintings. That's viewable on any device. And since I've already created this div class equals info, hopefully I don't have to add any more stuff in the HTML. I just need to make that hide on the bottom and then come back up. So I'll do that with, well, first let me give you guys some time to do what I just did. So for each painting, you should have a grid container, and this is the CSS. So grid container, grid item, and then you'll have nth child 1 all the way through 12, because we got 12 of them. And for each one, they'll use a different painting. So painting 1 through 12. So you're just going to change the number of the painting, 12.jpg, 11.jpg, 10.jpg. And it should have the appropriate information for the painting. Let's see if it makes sense. The Fountain of Love. Is there a fountain here? I guess, I don't know. Modern Rome. Yeah. Still life. Yep, that's a still life. Spring in the Alps. Yeah, okay. The text looks like it's in the right place. 2 boys with bladder. Yep. Okay, yeah. So correct text with the correct image. And then I'll give these paragraphs, because right now they're still white text, but it's on whatever background image it is, and it's not that easy to read. I'm gonna move this to the bottom again, and I guess I am gonna still have to use position absolute to position this absolutely at the bottom of its parent. And I'm gonna do the same thing, make it position absolute bottom negative like 20 pixels, and then when I hover over it, I'm going to change that bottom to like 0 instead of negative 20 to bring it up so you can see the rest of the text. But I also said I might want to change the information. Right now it's the Virgin Mary with Saint Tom, so it's like the name of the painting, and then the date, the artist, and the museum. So maybe we'll only show the name. That means I'll take the name part out of the paragraph. So the Fountain of Love for the first one, I'll put that inside an H2 or something. So I'll take the name, put it there, get rid of that comma. And I'll do that for all of them. Yeah, I was hoping I wouldn't have to repeat a bunch of steps again, but I guess I do again, because I want to make this an H2. I guess here, just to save some time, I won't do all that because unnecessary. We'll just make this stick to the bottom and bring it up so you can see the rest of it. So you'll only see the first line down here, and then when we hover over it, we'll see the rest of it. Alright, so let's think about how we're going to do this. I'll go to styles. First of all, I want to make each grid item grid container grid item. You know what? It would be nice if we were using Sass right now instead of regular CSS. And since it's the final week, maybe I should show you a little bit of SCSS. What it's gonna do is allow me to, all it is it's gonna let me do this. Watch, instead of grid container grid item like this, I'll be able to say grid container and then put whatever CSS rules I need to put for that, and then just put the grid item inside. It lets you nest things among other features, but that's like the most useful feature that I have for Sass. But yeah, it's not gonna simplify this much. And this is only CGD 200, so we'll have plenty of time to talk about Sass in another class, but I'll show you just a quick example of how you would use Sass. First of all, you're gonna need the Sass extension, or what was it called? Live Sass compiler. Yeah, this one. This would be another extension that you need to install. And what this lets you do is you create a SCSS file. So a new CSS, but instead of styles.css, I'll say styles.scss. But I'm still going to link to the CSS file. I'm not changing my CSS link. I'm just creating a new file called styles.scss. And I could copy all of this, paste it into styles.scss. Okay. And because it's a SCSS file and I have that extension, down here I should see watch Sass. When you click watch Sass, it basically takes all of this SCSS and converts it to regular CSS, which I already have. But it's basically gonna let me do things like this. So we've got grid container, grid item, right? Well, I could delete this here and just take this, stick it inside here. After my grid container rules, I have grid item inside. So it's like it's letting me nest this inside this. And then all these grid container nth child, I could also stick these inside. Say grid item nth child 1. I could put all those inside as well. I wouldn't need to have this anymore, just grid nth child. But yeah, I should have done this from the beginning if I really want to make use of it. But basically anything like this that's not supported in regular CSS, nesting things like this, when you click watch Sass, it just takes it and converts it into regular CSS. It also, look, it adds some other stuff here. It added these WebKit, like in case border box sizing doesn't work in some browsers, it adds this little prefix that will let it work if it's possible. So it added a lot of extra stuff here. But again, it's too late to get into Sass, so I just wanted to show you what that was. In the future, we'll learn about it. It also creates these CSS map files, but I'll delete that as well. Okay. What happened to my height? Grid item, height 200 pixels. Oh, space. Okay. Alright, let's do the white background on these. Oh no, it's 8:33 already. Okay, I said we'd take a break at 8:15. It's 8:30 though. Let's take a break now. In the meantime, I'll upload this again, but I'm gonna make a couple changes. What happened to this? So take a quick break, 15 minutes. In the meantime, I'm not gonna take a break. You guys can take a break, but I'll be here fixing anything I might have just messed up. I don't know why those got deleted. Actually, there's not much for me to change right now, so leave it as is and I'll upload this right now.